In 2025, the US Congress passed legislation that would have banned TikTok across the country unless a Chinese parent company sold it. National security officials asserted that the app posed a threat. Critics argued that the move was censorship. All the while, TikTok was treated like what exactly? A piece of software, a surveillance tool, a threat to democracy? Let's take a step back. Why is an app developed by a private company run on a for profit algorithm suddenly at the center of global politics? Or take another example. In Ukraine, Elon Musk's Starlink satellite network played a critical role in enabling communications for Ukrainian forces. At one point, Starlink temporarily cut off their access, limiting their ability to conduct military operations. Ukrainian officials were forced to plead with Musk on Twitter for him to restore the service. Think about that. A sovereign government was negotiating with a billionaire tech executive for access to critical military infrastructure. In both of these examples, power is being exerted on the international stage, but not by presidents, ambassadors, or states. It's being exercised by non-state actors. This unit asks us to rethink the way we understand international relations, because while states remain powerful, they no longer monopolize that power. Increasingly, the actors shaping diplomacy, conflict, and cooperation across borders aren't governments at all. They're corporations, they're non-governmental organizations, they're advocacy networks, terrorist groups, hackers, and yes, even 16-year-olds with smartphones and millions of followers.
So, what exactly are we talking about when we use the term non-state actors? In simple terms, a non-state actor is any individual or organization that plays a meaningful role in international politics, but is not a sovereign state or an official part of a government. That's the basic definition, but behind that simplicity lies a world of complexity. Traditionally, international relations focused almost entirely on states, sovereign governments that controlled territories, maintained borders, and exercised authority over populations. In this framework, states make treaties, wage wars, and decide policy. Other actors were treated as background noise or ignored altogether. But the real world is messier than that. Today, non-state actors shape decisions, influence outcomes, and often challenge or even replace roles we traditionally associate with governments. They vary enormously in terms of size, structure, motivation, and legitimacy. Some are cooperative and constructive. Think of humanitarian NGOs or scientific coalitions. Others are violent and destabilizing. Think terrorist networks and cybercriminal syndicates. Some are formal institutions with rules and charters, others are loosely connected online movements. But what unites them are this: they're exercising influence across borders, often with global consequences, and they're doing so outside the frameworks of traditional state sovereignty. They may not hold seats at the United Nations, but they shape what states talk about, how they act, and what they can or cannot ignore. Still, for our purposes, we can group most non-state actors into one of four broad categories. First, we have non-governmental organizations, or NGOs. These are non-state actors that may not hold formal power, but they often work closely with states and international institutions. NGOs like Amnesty International, Greenpeace, or Doctors Without Borders operate independently of governments. They often focus on human rights, humanitarian relief, development, or environmental protection. While they don't make laws, they can shape policy, monitor abuses, and influence public opinion across borders. Closely related are transnational advocacy networks, or TANs, loose coalitions of activists, NGOs, experts, and sometimes even journalists or local movements, working together to promote norms, rights, and accountability on a global scale. Unlike single NGOs, these networks often link across countries and sectors, helping coordinate campaigns and share resources. They may lobby governments, push for new international treaties, or name and shame states that violate global norms. Together, NGOs and TANs represent what we might call institutional non-state actors, organized actors that help manage, challenge, or reform the international system outside the formal channels of state diplomacy. Multinational corporations, or MNCs, are companies that operate across national borders. Think Apple, Amazon, Shell, or Nestle. Many of these firms generate revenues larger than the GDPs of entire countries, and they often wield tremendous influence over trade policy, labor standards, tax regimes, or even climate negotiations. In many cases, states rely on these companies for investment, infrastructure, and employment. In others, MNCs may challenge state authority, seeking favorable laws, avoiding taxes, or even influencing elections. Highly empowered individuals, a term used by the U.S. State Department, refers to people who, through wealth, charisma, activism, or digital influence, are able to mobilize people across borders and shape international debates. Think Greta Thunberg and the climate change protests, or Malala Yousafzai, Nobel Peace Prize winner and advocate for girls' education, or Elon Musk, whose companies influence space exploration, telecommunications, even geopolitics. These individuals are often norm shapers and movement builders, operating outside formal institutions. Also operating in this space are epistemic communities, networks of scientists, technical experts, and policy specialists who influence global politics not through protest or publicity, but through knowledge, credibility, and expertise. These groups shape how states understand complex problems, from climate change to global health to arms control, and often play key roles in agenda setting, risk assessment, and policy design. But not all non-state actors play by the rules. Some operate in opposition to the state or entirely outside the bounds of international law. These include terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, drug cartels and transnational organized crime networks, private military companies like the Wagner Group, and cybercriminals and hacker collectives like Anonymous. These actors challenge state sovereignty through violence, coercion, or disruption. They're key players in global security, raising a variety of complex ethical, legal, and strategic questions. And this list isn't exhaustive, but it gives us a clear framework to work from. Each of these categories of non-state actors operates differently, pursues different goals, and interacts with states and with each other in complex ways. Over the next few videos, we'll look at each group more closely, what they do, how they do it, and why they matter. This framework gives us a clear way to organize non-state actors, but the real world is messy, and some of the most interesting actors are hybrid actors that defy easy classification, deliberately operating in the gray zones between state and non-state power. Take the Wagner Group, for example. Wagner is a Russian private military company that's operated in Ukraine, Syria, and across Africa. While technically independent, it has deep ties to the Russian government and often advances Moscow's foreign policy goals without triggering the same legal or diplomatic consequences that official military action might. So, is Wagner a private firm, a tool of the Russian state, or something in between? Hybrid actors like this complicate our categories and remind us that international relations often operates in gray zones. This table summarizes some of the key elements and the differences between the various types of group we'll explore throughout the unit. Please feel free to pause the video and review the table at your convenience. For much of the 20th century, we drew the map of global politics in simple terms. The world was a system of sovereign states. Our main theories, especially realism, gave us a clear set of rules for this map. States are the only actors that truly matter. The international system is a dangerous anarchy, and power is measured by military and economic might. In this view, non-state actors were, at best, tools of the state, or at worst, irrelevant background noise. But that map no longer matches the territory. The state-centric view is struggling to explain the world we live in, a world where a high-tech billionaire can influence war, a teenage activist can set the global climate agenda, and a terrorist network can challenge the world's most powerful armies. So, what changed? A series of powerful forces have fueled the rise of non-state actors, fundamentally redrawing the map of global power. First, globalization and technology have supercharged non-state actors. The same forces that allow you to buy a product made on the other side of the world also allow an MNC to shift billions of dollars across borders, escaping national taxes. The internet and social media have shattered the state's monopoly on information. They allow NGOs to expose human rights abuses in real time, activists to coordinate projects and protests across continents, and violent groups to broadcast their propaganda and recruit followers globally. This new reality of interconnected markets and instant communication is a world that liberalism, with its focus on interdependence, has always tried to describe. But even it struggles to account for the speed and scale of influence now available to individuals. Second, the role of the state itself is changing. In many parts of the world, states are unable or unwilling to provide basic services like healthcare, education, or even security. Non-state actors, from humanitarian NGOs like Doctors Without Borders to local warlords, step in to fill these governance gaps. At the same time, global problems like climate change, pandemics, and financial crises are too complex for any single state to solve alone. This forces states to cooperate with a vast network of actors, scientific panels, advocacy groups, and corporations to get anything done. States are no longer the only ones in charge. This new, messy reality requires us to update our theoretical software. While realism struggles to explain actors who wield influence without armies or territory, other theories might offer a stronger guide. Constructivism is arguably the best equipped theory to understand this new world. Constructivists argue that power isn't just about bombs and banks, it's about ideas, norms, and identity. From this perspective, non-state actors are crucial norm entrepreneurs. When an NGO like Amnesty International shames a government for torture, it's not just reporting a fact, it's enforcing a global norm about what is and isn't acceptable behavior for a state. When Greta Thunberg inspires millions to strike for the climate, she's changing how a generation thinks about sovereignty and the national interest. These actors don't operate within the system, they actively work to change its rules. And critical theories like Marxism and postcolonialism push us to ask deeper questions. They see multinational corporations not just as economic players, but as agents of global capitalism that perpetuate inequality between the global North and South. They critique how large, Western-based NGOs can sometimes impose their own values, drowning out local voices and often unintentionally reproducing colonial power dynamics. These theories force us to look beyond who has power and ask, whose interests does this power serve?
So, where does this leave us? States still matter immensely. They pass laws, command armies, and control borders. But they're no longer the only players on the field. Power in the 21st century is networked, decentralized, and contested. The international system is now a complex ecosystem of states, corporations, activists, and other actors, all competing and cooperating. So in the remainder of this unit, we're going to explore what that looks like in practice.